All right. Look, we want to talk about now that we said, look, originally the only thing we said about America to this point is Woodrow Wilson, its president, said that what is America's official position going to be? Neutral. We're staying out of this. Okay. We're not picking sides. You got the Allied powers on one side and you got the Central powers. And here's the thing. Why neutrality? Why does Woodrow Wilson want to be neutral? You want to take any chances to guess why we would be neutral? Why do you think America would stay neutral? I mean, you don't even need to know anything about World War One to do this. Where are we located as opposed to Europe? Pretty far away. So we look at it as what? Not our problem. That's across the Atlantic Ocean. Okay. Another reason why the United States is neutral, all right, is that we had ties to a lot of the countries on both sides. Remember, what's flowing into the United States every single year? Or I shouldn't say what, but who's coming to the United States every single year? Immigrants from all over Europe. Okay. And there's a huge German population that are there. And there's also a huge British and French population and Irish. All right. And there's people from all over Europe come to the United States and they're like, look, we got a lot of ties to a lot of different countries there. Right. And we do business with a lot of different countries there. So it's like, look, we want to stay out of this. Okay. And Woodrow Wilson says, yeah, we want to stay neutral. Okay. And Wilson, by the way, he's a very stuffy, serious looking man. All right. Now, Woodrow Wilson, despite the fact that he says that we're neutral here, America is going to provide a lot of economic assistance to the Allied powers. Okay. America is going to provide a lot of economic assistance to the Allied powers. Even though we had ties to both sides, we are selling supplies and even weapons to our British friends. All right. If you don't know, remember, America has a long-standing relationship with Great Britain. We used to be a British colony, and we've had a good economic relationship with them to this point. Ooh, all right. And so we have a little bit of a British bias. You know, they're closest to us in culture, we're closest to us in language, and also we relied on them for information from Europe. Okay, so naturally we are a little bit biased towards Great Britain, and we're giving them economic assistance. If you're Germany and Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, how do you feel about America helping out the other side? Probably pretty mad. Now, look, you have to realize this too. America, one of America's greatest assets at this point is its ability to produce stuff. Because, for example, like in Europe, factories are constantly in danger of being bombed or blown up or destroyed. But does America have to worry about that? No, we don't. So we're like this big supplier of weapons and food and other necessary supplies for war. Okay? Now, here's what happens. America is going to get pressured to join the war, and we're going to be able to resist pressure for a long time. One incident nearly pushes us in the war. It's the sinking, and on your outline, excuse me, I accidentally put stinking of the Lusitania. All right. The Lusitania is a passenger ship that goes between Great Britain and the United States. And you can see here from the New York Times headline, it's sunk by a German U boat, a submarine. And I love it. If you look at the headline, it's like probably 1,260 dead. All right. And it's torpedoed off the coast of Ireland, sinks in 15 minutes. The captain's saved, and they talk about their important people on this ship. Okay. And Americans hear that a German U boat sunk a passenger ship. And how do you think Americans feel about this? Remember, what happened when the USS Maine blew up in 1898? Who did we immediately blame? Who's the country we went to war with in the Spanish American War? Spain. All right. You're like, oh, I've heard of that before. Okay. And so do you think Americans, when they hear about the Lusitania, a passenger ship getting blown up, do you think they're going to take that lightly? Not a chance. Americans are furious. And Woodrow Wilson is urging calm. Okay. He finds himself in a position similar to William McKinley. All right. Now, here's where things get interesting too. Fun fact about the Lusitania, even though it's a passenger ship, in the bottom in the cargo hold, take a guess what they were secretly transporting. weapons. And we're like, oh. And another thing too, Germany actually took out advertisements in major U.S. newspapers like the New York Times, warning Americans don't travel across the Atlantic because we're going to blow stuff up, right? And Americans, what we do anyway? And we're like, it'll be all right. What could go wrong? Okay. The Lusitania, when it's sunk, Woodrow Wilson's upset. American people are upset, but Woodrow Wilson says we got to stay calm. Okay. And here's what America does. We actually are able to resist pressure of going into the war because America makes a deal with Germany and the Kaiser. Okay. Kaiser Wilhelm offers what was called the Sussex Pledge. The Sussex Pledge. And when you pledge to do something, you make a promise. Okay. And this pledge is that we will not torpedo American ships any longer. Okay. Germany says, my bad, we won't do it again. Okay. And Woodrow Wilson is able to calm down the American people enough to where he keeps us out of the war. Okay. And 1915 is the second year of the war. And so America is able to stay out of the war. All right. And Americans are like, look, all right, we'll give Germany another chance. Okay. But unfortunately, though, look, you give people second chances and they end up disappointing you. Ooh. And it's going to get ugly, kids. It's going to get ugly. Okay. 2 years later, all right, 1917, the war is still going on. Remember, trench warfare, the ugliness of it all these new weapons, death and destruction. It's pretty bad. Okay. And here's what happens. Right, America is going to get pushed to the limit. Now, this stuffy looking little fellow here with his awesome hat and cane is a top German official. His name is Arthur Zimmermann. Ooh, Arthur Zimmermann. All right. And Zimmermann sends a telegram from Germany to Mexico. Okay. And it's called the Zimmermann Note. What a coincidence, right? Okay. And this is right here. This is the Zimmermann Note. What is that? It's a bunch of what? There's a bunch of numbers, right? I'll bet Arthur Zimmermann was sending a note to his friends in Mexico and be like, hey, here's the phone numbers of some really wonderful women that you could get together with, right? No. What do we know this really is? When you don't want somebody to read your mail, I mean, those numbers mean anything to you? It's a code, okay? It's a code, all right? Now, here's what I'm going to do for you fine people, okay? I want you real quickly to go to Schoology. Schoology. And I'm going to drop something in your folder for you and for you people at home too. And World War I, that's right, that's right. The Zimmermann Note. I'm going to make a nice PDF for this, and I'm going to add it to your course. Right? That's for you guys, and I'm going to put it in, if you're paying careful attention, today is Tuesday, and you know I love a good primary document. And Disco, it should be there. Now, while you're accessing that, I want to show you how decoding this message would work. Right? And I don't expect you to be expert code breakers, but just to give you an idea of what it was, like you can use letters or numbers, but it's what's called a substitution cipher, where like when you see this, like this little cryptogram here, you see a bunch of letters. And what do people obviously think one letter stands for, or one number stands for? It's not a trick. It's like one letter or one number, okay? But the reality is that regardless of how they group them, two letters equal one number. And so for example, F and G, like everybody would have, like both sides would have this little grid, which would be like the key, okay? So you find F and then you'd find G and find out where they intersect, and that would tell you the character that you would use, okay? And so in this case, it'd be F. And then you look at the next two, A and F, okay? A, and then you go over to F, and then the letter is E, right? And even though it's like 5 characters, like A and A, so you look at A, and that gives you the character B. And that's how these ciphers work, okay? And now you should have in your particular little area there the Zimmerman note, right? Now, take a look at this, and we want to walk you through some important parts of the Zimmerman note. Everybody got that pulled up on their screen? Fantastic, right? And when they decoded it, okay, when they decoded it, here's what becomes an issue. And you can highlight some things on here as well. So if you click on the little highlighter, okay, and the first sentence, we intend to begin on February, the 1st of February, what? Unrestricted submarine warfare. What does that mean? Unrestricted. What does it mean if there's no restrictions on something? You just do it, man. Okay? Meaning, what are the Germans, what are they going to violate? The Sussex Pledge. Okay? And it says, look, we shall endeavor in spite of this to keep the United States neutral. All right? Now, here's where things get hectic. In the event this is not successful, all right, meaning that if America jumps in the war, we make Mexico a proposal of alliance. They're trying to drag more people into the conflict, all right? And here's the following basis: make war together, make peace together, generous financial support, and an understanding that Mexico, on our part, that Mexico is to reconquer lost territory in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. Really quickly, when was the last time Mexico had that territory? You got to go way back to pre 1850 and the U.S. Mexican War. I know Billy Williams talks about that at some point in his class. So if you had him, he should have mentioned it. All right. Now, they're asking Mexico to do what to the United States? That's not a trick question, I promise. Yeah, attack the United States. If America gets involved in the United States, Mexico, you jump in there and you attack. Okay. Now it gets better. It says the settlement detail is left up to you. So you guys, if America gets in war, you guys just attack them as you see fit. All right. You will inform the president of Mexico, of the above most secretly as soon as the outbreak of war with the United States of America is certain. Meaning that what do the Germans expect to happen? Do they think America will stay out of the war? No, not at all. Okay. And it says, look, what's even better? The United States is certain, and add the suggestion that he, the president of Mexico, on his own initiative, should recruit Japan to immediate adherence to the same. Meaning that who else do they want to bring in on their side? Japan. Why would they want to recruit Japan along with Mexico? Who has a natural bent towards the Americans that doesn't like them? The Japanese. Okay? Because remember, we've insulted them many times. So they're like, hey, Mexico, you jump in the war, and while you're at it, recruit Japan. Does that seem like a really good idea? Yeah, great idea for who? Fun fact, what do you think Mexico says to this lovely proposal? They say hard pass on this. They're like, look, we understand that you guys are out to win a war. And look, this is the text of it, like we just said. And here's where this gets tricky. You can see the dark green is where Mexico is like what it currently was in 1915, 1960. And that red line shows you what Mexico, like the area that they lost to the United States. And the green areas, the green states, Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, those would be something they would give back to them. All right. And Mexico's in such a weak condition, they really want no part of this. All right. Now, here's where things get bananas. The Zimmerman note was intercepted by the British, and they share it with the United States. And at first, like, do you think America is willing to believe that it's authentic? No, because they're like, the British are just trying to do what? Get them mad, get them fired up, and get in the war. All right. But the Americans confront the Germans with it, and take a guess what Germany says. Yeah, we sent it. So what? All right. Ooh. Now America is furious, okay? America is really ticked off. And if that wasn't bad enough, Germany started doing exactly what they said they were going to do, okay? They started shooting American ships right out of the water. Take a look at this right here, this map up on the screen, okay? Shows you from September 1916 to April 1917, okay? Every single one of these dots on this map represents a U-boat shooting a passenger ship or a supply ship out of the water. That's just in a 6-month period, okay? Meaning that, do you want to be the person who's captaining a ship crossing the Atlantic bound for like France or Great Britain? Not me. All right. I always feel bad for this one up here, right to the immediate west of Ireland, like that little dot. They probably thought they were safe. They're like, we're isolated. Nobody ever gets torpedoed up here. And ultimately, what happens? They get torpedoed. You also notice between Great Britain and France, there's like the highest concentration there. Okay. That 6-month period, you're seeing ultimately people get really like nervous, not only nervous about traveling across there, but sending goods and services. Also think of this for a second too. Let's say that Addison owns a business, okay? And that let's say she makes weapons. That's what her factory does. And they get a major purchase order from Great Britain for rifles. And before those rifles ever get to Great Britain, the ship is sunk. Addison's upset because is she getting paid for that? No. All right. And that's very discouraging to her. All right. Not to mention how annoying it is for Great Britain and France. They're like, hey, we desperately need these supplies. Because remember, early on, Germany's doing well in the war. All right. Now, for the United States part, this pushes them over the edge. The Zimmerman note plus the German sub activity. President Woodrow Wilson wants a declaration of war. He's like, look, Germany has gone over the line. And I know that we really wanted to stay neutral, but we need an army, and we need an army fast. Ooh. And also, Woodrow Wilson tried to frame this as he says, "Hey, we're not just getting involved in this war because we think the British are our friends." He said, "We got to make the world safe for democracy." He said, "Look, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Ottoman Empire, they all have something in common. Who rules over them? Who's in charge of Germany? The Kaiser. Who's in charge of Austria-Hungary? Emperor Franz Joseph. And the Ottoman Empire ruled by a sultan, meaning those are all autocrats, okay, monarchs. And we democracies have to stick together, all right? And that's how he's framing it, okay? And do you think Congress has any problem declaring war? No, Americans are totally behind it, okay? April 1917, America is going to jump in the war on the Allies' side. Ooh, ooh. Jumping in the war is not easy, though, okay? Jumping in the war is going to be difficult, and here's why. Before World War I, America doesn't have a very big standing army, okay? Because we tried to stay out of messes. So it's like, hey, we want to keep our army as slimmed down as possible, all right? And you have to get mobilized for war, okay? And mobilized means you have to literally get ready to fight. And that's not easy to do. Number one, you need equipment, okay? Factories have to change what they do and get equipment ready. Okay. Now, this picture right here, anybody know what they're making? This is a hard one. They're producing something. Notice too, they're very patriotic with their flag. No, these are airplane chassis, like the body of an airplane, of biplanes. Okay. And factories, what they would do is they would completely retool their factories to set it up for something different. And so, for example, like let's say Noah is the owner of a factory that produces engines for automobiles. And they're like, hey, Noah, we love the fact that you make these engines, but what we need you to do is devote a little bit of factory resources, not all of them, just a little bit, to not making engines for vehicles now, but engines for airplanes. Okay. And so he's got to change his factory up a little bit because that's not what he usually does. However, is the government going to pay him for this? Oh, yeah. okay? And you have to realize that a lot of times war is good for business, okay? And think about everything you need for an army, all right? So just for an individual, like let's say that we're all in the infantry, meaning we're regular foot soldiers, okay? What does a regular soldier need in terms of his equipment? What do you need first? That's not a trick question. An outfit, clothing, okay? All right. So go back and the headline I just showed you, Woodrow Wilson called for a 500,000 man army. All right. And let's say that over here, Harper has a factory where she makes clothing. And they're like, hey, Harper, how would you like a contract for 500,000 military uniforms? Do you think companies would like to have that? Absolutely. And look, Harper's not a really creepy individual, but what does she know is going to happen to a lot of those soldiers when they go off to war? They're going to die, meaning that we need new soldiers, which means she's probably going to get more uniform money. All right. She's going to get another contract. Right. And that helps out her company. So then we have an issue. What else do you need for war? What does every member of the infantry need other than just clothing? What goes on your head? A helmet. Somebody's got to make helmets. All right. And everyone needs a rifle to shoot. And you're going to need bullets. Imagine if you are one of these factories and the government's going to pay you to produce this stuff. You're definitely excited about that. I'll show you another picture here too. Okay. Munitions factories are super exciting. And you'd see they're packing explosive shells here, but these can be terribly dangerous places to work. If you were in a munitions factory, you got to be extra careful because like one explosion and the whole place will go up. Now, something else that's relevant too, what do you notice about some of the people working in this picture? Who is working in this picture? Women, okay? Do women usually do important factory jobs? No, okay? But they are during World War One. Why? The men are going across the ocean to fight. And so women are going to have a huge role in World War One. And look, this is going to get women a little taste of life that they are not accustomed to because they're going to be making good wages, right? For example, if we're going to put Addison to work in a munitions factory because we need her help, all right, we need to teach her how to do it right. This type of work right here, we don't need mistakes. Mistakes get people killed, okay? So if she doesn't make them correctly, then we got a problem. And what's the best way to incentivize a good worker? Pay them well. Okay. So they take care of these people. Women are making good money. And for the first time in their life, women have an income that's really all their own. All right. And women start to get a taste of having some financial freedom. Okay. So these factories completely change, well, not completely, but they change significantly to make the materials necessary for war: tanks, airplanes, rifles, artillery pieces. Okay. All of that stuff has to be made and get us over there. So number one, you got factories that have to change, and they don't change overnight. So for example, when like let's say that Christian's got a company that makes regular bullets, okay, and he's going to need to make a lot of bullets, and also they're like, hey, while you're at it making bullets, we need artillery shells, big shells like that. And he goes, well, we'll do that for you, but it's going to take us at least 2 weeks to get that up and running, okay. And he's like, and that's with people working around the clock, and they're like, that's fine, okay. But the longer that stuff takes, the longer it takes for you to be able to get into the war. Okay. Second thing that's necessary, you not only need supplies, but you're going to need what's called people. Okay. We got to have conscription. Okay. What is conscription? Anybody know? Volunteer army is not good enough. You have to conscript people into service. What do we regularly call that? When you require people serve. You've been selected for a military draft. When you see conscription, it's referring to a military draft. World War I, we're going to draft people in to fight. That's conscription. Okay. Do you think everybody wants to fight who gets drafted? No. Tomorrow you're going to have an article to read which is related to conscription and the draft, but we're not going to get to that yet. Okay. People are required to fight though, and not everybody wants to. Right? Most Americans are gung ho. They're all about it. They get drafted and they feel they have to do a duty. Okay, so we're changing factories. We're not only getting volunteers to fight, but we're getting people drafted. Also, too, what's a powerful motivator to get men to fight when they didn't want to? Like, if you got drafted, why would you not try to get out of it? How do they appeal to men in that regard? If you're a man, what do you not want to get called, especially at this time? A coward. Okay, and believe me, they will totally use that as a means of getting you ready. Okay, next thing you need here, if you're going to have all these soldiers fighting and you're going to have all these supplies for the military and the government's going to pay for them, you got to have money. Okay, and normally when the government pays for something, where does the government get money from? How does the government get money? What does everybody have to pay and they hate them? Taxes. All right. But tax dollars aren't enough. So the government starts selling war bonds. Okay. And here's an example of some of them. Okay. A war bond. A war bond is when regular people they purchase a certificate or a bond from the government. They give the government money willingly, and the government promises to pay it back plus interest when the war's over. That's a war bond, right? People, the citizens, are voluntarily giving money to the government because they're like, the government needs it right now. War bonds is what they refer to them as. That's an example of some of them, but some of the fancier ones later on would look like this. Redeemable, you can see it's like a certificate that almost looks like currency itself. Okay? War bonds, people would buy them and they're like, hey, the government, like if you bought a $50 war bond, you pay the $50 and then after the war's over, they'll pay you back plus interest. Okay? So you're guaranteed to get money. Okay? As long as you front the government a little bit of money right now. And believe me, people bought up war bonds because they thought they had an obligation. Fun fact, after the war was over, some people never bothered cashing in their war bonds. Why not? Why would some people not cash in the war bonds? What would they feel like they had a duty to do? If they're not in the war, they could at least feel like they're helping. And they felt like they had an obligation to help out the government. They're like, our society has been really good to me. So if the government needs an extra $50 or $100 and I can do without it, I'm not going to redeem it. All right. And war bonds are going to be huge during World War I and later during World War II. Right. Now we don't do that. Can you imagine how annoyed people would get if you like asked them to buy war bonds? Like, are you serious? My taxes are high enough already. And you start to understand taxes when, do you all have jobs? When you get a job, Kelly, how do you feel when you look at your paycheck and you see the taxes taken out of it? Yeah, because it's basically like for you, it's probably about a quarter of your paycheck, what you're supposed to get. And it gets a little worse as you make more money. There's some people like when you get up to for example, if you're making like $10 million a year, you're going to lose a good 4 million of that to taxes, right? Unless you have Donald Trump's lawyer. Okay. Now, the other big thing that you need, okay, in the war effort is look, even still, remember, a lot of Americans weren't gung ho about the war in the first place, okay? So to get people ready for war, you have to start what we call a propaganda effort. And I put the specific definition of propaganda up here for you because it's that important. You have to make people believe that the war is the right thing to do. All right? And propaganda is distributing ideas, information, or rumors to help or to hurt a cause. Okay? And propaganda helps a war. We got to make people despise Germany and Austria-Hungary. Right? And by the way, does propaganda necessarily have to be true? No, not at all. The best propaganda is lies. Like, for example, let's say that I have a mission, and my mission is to make people dislike Noah. All right. So, one of the things I'm going to do, one of the propaganda pieces I'm going to put out there is I'm going to put out a message, a little bulletin, and I'm going to post them all around the school. And it's a little note saying that it'll have a direct quote from Addison saying, I saw Noah Jordan kicking puppies. Right? They're like, is that a true statement? No. Well, it doesn't really matter. But once people see it, it's in their head and they automatically like, well, maybe he didn't kick a puppy, but maybe he thought about kicking a puppy because there has to be truth to it, or they wouldn't say it, or they wouldn't print it, right? America has to get people to support the war, all right? And propaganda is all about that. That's the goal of propaganda, to either help a cause or to hurt a cause, all right? And we'll get into propaganda more on Thursday. That's a good place for us to stop right there. Oh, America, we're in the conflict now.